The hunt for the gunmen who opened fire at a funeral service, seriously injuring a 7-year-old girl. The suspects fired shots from a car as hundreds were leaving the service for a mother and her daughter near Euston Station in London.
People came here to attend a funeral, to be with friends and loved ones and mourn together. Instead, they were the victims of a senseless act of violence.
Also ahead, dozens are killed after a passenger jet crashes in Nepal. Here, Labour's prescription to save the NHS, but will it work? And in sport, crucial goals and late drama in both the Premier League and Women's Super League.
This is ITV News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. More than 24 hours after a drive-by shooting which has left a 7-year-old girl seriously ill in hospital, the suspects remain at large. Today, the Met Police released details of the attack in the middle of London in broad daylight when gunmen opened fire on a crowd as dozens of people were leaving a funeral service for a mother and daughter. Detectives want to trace a black Toyota car. Understandably, terrified mourners fled from the horrifying scene and back into the church for shelter. Images which are in Cedric Carrier's report from Euston.
These were the scenes inside the church, just moments after the drive-by shooting outside. There was panic as people ran in for safety and screaming in sheer terror. Many had gathered outside after attending a memorial service when a shot was fired from a moving car. Next door, the manager of the local food bank heard the shots ring out.
What alerted me was the noise, the sound of the shot. And already our manager was up at the gate because our session was just drawing to a close. And she immediately locked the gate. Again, she couldn't see anything, but she saw people running. We're just chilled to the bone to think that there would be a gun fired in broad daylight on our streets.
The pellets fired into a crowd of mourners on a Saturday afternoon. 6 people were injured, 4 women and 2 young children, aged just 12 and 7. Police say they still don't know why.
The 48-year-old woman has sustained potentially life-changing injuries. A 12-year-old girl sustained a leg injury. She is expected to make a full recovery. A 7-year-old girl was more seriously injured. She remains in hospital in a stable but life-threatening conditions.
They were shot after mourning the deaths of Frisha Calderon on the left and her daughter Sarah. Both had died within a month of each other. An invitation to celebrate life ended with a 7-year-old girl fighting for hers. Police believe the shots fired at her were from a car similar to this one. They're now on the hunt for a black Toyota CHR with a 2019 registration.
What many in this community cannot understand is how people who'd come to be with their loved ones to mourn ended up being victims of such shocking violence. Even more disturbing is the fact that there were 2 young children among them.
As yet, there have been no arrests, but police say they're determined to bring to justice those responsible for this attack. Cedric Carrier, ITV News.
A plane carrying 72 people has crashed in Nepal, killing at least 68. The Yeti Airlines flight from the capital Kathmandu to the tourist town of Pokhara crashed into a hillside as it came into land. 4 people remain missing as the search operation has been suspended for the day. It is the country's deadliest airplane accident in 3 decades. Alex Eitzert's report has images of the plane just before it crashed.
Scorched ground, billowing smoke, the devastating aftermath of the deadly plane crash that killed 68 in Nepal. With only moments to go until a 27-minute Yeti airline flight from Kathmandu would be landing at the newly opened airport in Pokhara, the plane was filmed behaving erratically, turning sharply before crashing to the ground.
When the plane made a loud noise, we turned around and we saw the bamboo tree fall down. I told my friend that the plane was falling to the ground. We heard the sound of a blast.
Despite hundreds of rescuers searching into the night, 4 of the 72 people on board are still missing. Efforts have now been suspended overnight and will resume Monday morning.
The incident was tragic. The full force of the Nepali army, police, has been deployed for rescue.
The Himalayan country has a record of air accidents, as the weather can change suddenly and airstrips are typically situated in difficult-to-reach mountainous areas. As an investigation into what caused the incident continues, airline owner Yeti cancelled all its regular flights for Monday, in mourning for the passengers who lost their lives. Alex Isat, ITV News.
Well, here the Labour leader has warned the NHS must reform or die. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, he outlined his plans for overhauling it. Sir Keir Starmer called the situation for patients intolerable and dangerous, and the idea that the NHS is still the envy of the world, plainly wrong. Our political correspondent David Wood reports.
Long delays for ambulances, significant waits in accident and emergency, and a backlog of non-urgent operations. This is the reality for many patients in the NHS in England this winter. The Labour leader says long-term reform is the way to fix things. Whilst his criticism of mind-boggling bureaucracy in the service has angered some, he insists reform is necessary.
You will always have, whether it's the NHS or any other public service, people say, well, don't do it, it's always been done this way. They're nearly always wrong. Of course, there will be, challenges whenever you reform something. But frankly, if you don't reform the NHS, then I fear it will die.
Under the plans, Labour wants to recruit and train more NHS staff like midwives, doctors and nurses. It also wants to allow patients a chance to self-refer to specialists, like someone with back pain referring themselves to a physiotherapist. Also look at using the private sector effectively whilst keeping the NHS free. And to make all GPs NHS employees rather than them running their own surgeries. But one union says Labour has no idea how the NHS works.
We are not averse to change. It's a complete fallacy that doctors want a health service to stay as it is. We're the first people to say we want change in the health service, but please can we have it evidence-based? Please can you listen to frontline staff?
Others like Labour's long-term plans, but warn one major short-term problem needs treatment first.
It would be to address our crisis in social care. Because as long as we have 160,000 plus vacancies in social care, then not only are we not providing people the care they want, but it's very hard to get people out of hospital. And that's the thing that leads to hospitals being full, ambulances waiting, etc., etc.
Rishi Sunak says cutting NHS waiting lists is a key priority. A general election may be some time off, but the political party's prescription for the NHS is already a major battleground.
David, some pretty striking language from Sir Keir today.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, because you would normally expect Labour, and it wants to be seen as the party of the NHS, and you'd expect it to defend the NHS. Instead, here we have the Labour leader being very critical and using very critical language. He would say, though, he's criticising the organisation, not the people involved, and that reform is needed. It will worry some on the left of his party, though, that there's even the slightest hint of working out what the private sector, could do as part of the NHS. But Sir Keir Starmer's often been criticised of not having big ideas for big policy areas. I think this would be him trying to address those critics.
And the NHS and other public sector services coming under more pressure again this coming week.
Yes, all because of the ongoing strikes and arguments over pay in particular and conditions with the government. Tomorrow in the House of Commons, laws to avert what the government sees as serious disruption by strikes about minimum service levels that have to operate in health, fire and rail when workers walk out. They'll come back up for MPs to vote on. I'm told the government's confident it'll get its own way, but it is controversial. It's squaring up to the unions. As for the unions, well, tomorrow we're expecting to hear from one of the teaching unions in England over whether they will be walking out. That could be up to some 300,000 teachers in England. The thoughts are they will vote to walk out. The GMB union is expected to announce potentially up to 6 ambulance strikes in England on Wednesday. The Royal College of Nursing in England has a walkout set to affect more nurses than previous strikes. That goes into Thursday, and then paramedics are also set to walk out in Wales on that day. The government, though, standing firm. Yes, talks will go on in private with the unions, but at the moment the government seemingly wanting to face down the unions.
All right, David, for now. Thank you. ITV News can reveal the government is expected to announce a new law banning so-called gay conversion therapy tomorrow. The ban will outlaw attempts to change a person's sexuality and also attempts to change someone's gender identity. The government had previously said that trans conversion therapy would be excluded from a ban. It's understood that Downing Street has been surprised by the level of cross-party support, including from within the Conservative Party, for a total ban. Major disruption is expected after a main railway line collapsed in a huge landslip which left one track hanging in mid-air. The landslip happened near Hook Station in Hampshire on the line from London to Basingstoke. Commuters have been told to check before they travel by South Western Railway. And in the US, the president has declared a state of emergency in California after the state was hit by further powerful storms that have killed at least 19 people. Severe winter storms have brought torrential downpours, which have caused floods, mudslides and power cuts over the past 2 weeks. The death toll from a Russian missile strike on a tower block in Dnipro in Ukraine has risen to 23. The attack on the apartment block destroyed dozens of flats. Rescuers have been searching through the rubble and there have been some miraculous rescues. Vincent McAvenny has our report.
In the dawn light, rescuers who had spent hours combing through the rubble to release her managed to save this woman from the ruins of her own home. Injured but thankful to be freed, they carefully carried her through the collapsed structure to safety and medical attention. For hours they'd searched through the night for survivors in what's left of a 9-story apartment building. On Saturday, a Russian missile landed in the entrance, turning several floors from family homes to smouldering rubble. By hand, with cranes and using sniffer dogs, firefighters and volunteers dug for victims. Watching on, friends and family waited for news of loved ones.
I went out into the yard and people just screamed. Children, women, bloody people were walking around. The police were everywhere. I went out, but the floor of the house was gone.
This is clearly terrorism, and all this is simply not human. Victory must be won on the battlefield, not among the civilian population.
In his nightly address, President Zelensky again criticised Russia for targeting civilians.
It is not yet known how many people are under the rubble. Unfortunately, the list of the dead is growing every hour. My condolences to the families and friends. The enemy will definitely receive our response on the battlefield. Our warriors will ensure it.
All through today, rescuers have continued searching for survivors. 39 have been found, including 6 children. But 43 are still believed to be missing. The city's mayor has warned the chances of them having survived are minimal. Speaking to State TV in Moscow, President Putin claims that his military operations are going to plan. But these family bedrooms and kitchens don't look much like battlefield targets to Ukrainians, left waiting for news on the missing. Vincent McAvenny, ITV News.
To sport now, and the top 2 in the Women's Super League went head-to-head this afternoon. Second-placed Arsenal were heading for victory against leaders Chelsea until Sanka equalised in the dying minutes for Chelsea in front of 46,000 fans, the second biggest crowd ever in the Super League. The 1-1 draw keeps Chelsea top. There was also a significant late goal in the Premier League where Newcastle's record signing Alexander Isak got the winner in a 1-0 victory over Fulham. Newcastle are up to 3rd place. And Arsenal could be heading 8 points clear at the top of the table. They took the lead against Spurs in the North London derby after a mistake from France World Cup goalkeeper Hugo Lloris. The latest score approaching half-time is now 2-0 to Arsenal. All right, that's it for now. I'm back with the late news at 10. Until then, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye for now.
This unexpected warm winter sun could disappear by lunchtime. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello there, good evening to you. It has been so much colder outside today. It's going to be a cold one tonight. Further wintry showers affecting northern parts of Scotland. Some showers also into southern Scotland, northern England, parts of Wales, the Midlands. Here, a mix of rain, sleet and hill snow. Quite a widespread frost tonight across the north in particular, and where we've got those wet surfaces, the risk of ice come dawn as well. Now, we're keeping a close eye on a deepening area of low pressure across the English Channel, bringing some heavy rainfall into southern counties for a time, the risk of localised flooding. And then when that wet weather hits the cold air across the southeast, we could see some snow for a time. The Met Office have got a weather warning in place for this. It is going to be marginal, all dependent on how low those temperatures drop. So as we head into tomorrow morning, a widespread frost across the north. That system will clear off the scene pretty quickly. And thereafter, it's not looking too bad. It will be chilly, but some lovely winter sunshine to enjoy as well. Have a lovely evening.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.